everyone, welcome to today's Dharma talk. Today the opening talk will be given by George Eastwood. George began practicing at Providence Zen Center in early 2020 and took the 5 precepts in November 2021. Living in Cumberland, he visits the center whenever possible and also benefits from the hybrid format developed during the pandemic. George is a father of 2. He graduated from Northeastern University with the goal of advancing cancer treatment. He now serves as executive director of the Emily Whitehead Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting patients and advocating for policies that expand access to advanced therapy treatments. And then answering questions will be Kwan Haeng Sunim. Kwan Haeng Sunim met Zen Master Seung Sahn at the Cambridge Zen Center in 1986. He was ordained as a novice monk in 1999 at Chik Che Sa, South Korea. And in 2003, he received Bhikku precepts at Tong Do Sa, South Korea. He has lived and practiced mainly at Chik Che Sa and Musangsa in Korea, where he performed the jobs of Housemaster, media director, and head monk. Kwan Haeng Sunim received inka, full permission to teach in December 2020, and he is currently the Abbot and Co-Guiding Teacher here at Providence Zen Center.
Thanks, Eva. And thanks, Eva, for putting all the effort together and asking everybody to give these talks. I think I've given about 3 in the past, and usually you're just asked. Now there's a spreadsheet. If those that don't know, Eva will tell you to sign up, so we now have someone offering to sign up, which I did. Why I did that, I have no idea, but that's why we come here, to figure that out. So these are usually really easy. I have no problem giving these. There's no data to remember, no story that's pre-written, as in my scientific world that I've, I guess, grown up in and built a life in. So I think the first one I ever gave, I asked Kwan Haeng Sunim, I said, "This is easy. You can never be wrong." And he said, "Actually, yes, you can, but we can't stop you because there's a microphone here and we don't jump in and interrupt." So, I found that pretty interesting. And I think the last time, there was probably 2 days in advance, I got a call, didn't even think about it. I assume I'll think about something in the hour we sit here before, and it will come up, and that's been the method. And actually got really good at that in every talk I've ever given, which might just be laziness. I can say that it's great, I'm flowing, we're just going with what we're saying here. But I might just not want to put any prep in, so I ask myself that all the time. So this time, I signed up a few weeks in advance. A lot of things going on in life. My father had passed away prior to a retreat here. Hiked to Everest Base Camp last month. Gave a talk in DC. And I was like, there'll be something to talk about. Maybe connected to that, maybe connected to the practice. But I think, once again, you walk in the door, we see that we're up here, immediately we have thoughts. Oh, that's different. And I think different for me was it didn't chase down a lot of thoughts there, right? I've given all the talks in the other room. You're used to being set up a certain way, but that's all thought, right? We're just trying to make some reason why it's going to be hard to do this or what we're going to talk about. Or really, we just walk upstairs and there's people and there's cushions and a microphone. I actually found this is a bit better. I can generally just stare off into nowhere. That would be very strange here with just a camera in front of me, so I have to look around and give a bit of a different talk here, which, part of the process. But, in sitting there, you're thinking, what does being present mean? Is it I feel if I over-prep for this, then I'm not being present. I'm not honoring what the practice is. So if I'm thinking of some story I heard and trying to write things down and have notes here, it feels like that's not present, but for some that might be. We might need some story, some crux, some part to tell. I tend to find that there's enough thoughts in an hour that I could give the next 10 talks on Saturdays over and over. So when sitting there, what is it about this room that's different? It's always warmer. It's always louder. There's sounds. Dave told us, ignore the chaos. I don't know the best way to ignore the chaos or accept it. There's some way that each of us handle it. But what came while I was sitting there was, a bead of sweat on my head, which immediately you start thinking, I'm giving the talk, my hair's going to be a mess, I'll be sweaty, but who cares, right? Quickly, we see like this line of thought about the bead of sweat, what it means, why the room is here, you name it. We can go down a path forever on that. So you kind of accept that and let it go away, and it's like, well, I have a date at 3:30. What if I sweated at a date? Would that be interesting? What do you do? Well, it seems like a little worse, but really, can I control that? Am I controlling my next breath, the blood pressure pumping around, like any of these physiologic systems? Do we have any control of them, and why do we think about them? And in all honesty, if we think about them in stress, sweating's one that you're probably going to sweat more. You're going to raise blood pressure. You're going to raise your anxiety. And it's just an interesting thought. And I think, who knows how many minutes into the first 25 minutes it became, well, isn't it amazing that we sweat and we don't just overheat and pass out? That's humans. That's us, right? And then I think the next thought from there is something like, when was the last time you remember a bead of sweat forming and you could feel it? Because now we're focused on this so strongly that I could feel this one bead of sweat drip down here. It falls off. Next step. But, being at that one point of thought, that is what's happening there. It's a little warmer. I'm going to give a talk in an hour. There's sweat forming on my head. So naturally you have to think of something else next, and it's, should I wipe it off or should I let it stay? What good does wiping it off do? It's still there. I've had meditations in the past where I've sat here and been like, it's so strong that I'm sitting here and not reacting. But now I found I've spent 20 minutes thinking about the beads of sweat on my head, and is that what I'm supposed to be doing here? I don't know. So at the 25-minute, you wipe it off, there's no sweat, but it just forms back, and it just keeps coming. So I think that is our life. No matter what problem we wipe away, you're not going to change the situation you're in that moment. Take that to nearly all of the practice that we have. I think about last month, did a 10-day trek to Everest Base Camp to raise money for cancer research, to feed my own ego about being selected by the biotech reporter to go, to you name it. There's a million reasons why I would do it. One of the most important is I won't exercise unless there's some goal that I can fail in front of people and be embarrassed about. So I have to go on the treadmill every day for an hour. It was probably, I'd like to say I didn't give mathematical percentages to every piece, but that was probably 60% of it was you have to get up and you have to do it and you have to rearrange your schedule to not be carried up a mountain by 6 Sherpas, which I think properly embarrassing enough to put the work in for 6 months in advance. And I'm someone I just did it for myself. I don't want to talk about it. But when people ask you repeatedly in our industry, you have to start coming up with answers. I started just making up things that it was great because of this. Then by the 50th person, it became something like, well, I have to reflect and see what this was about. And the most important thing to me was I actually bought all the gear, had a checklist, and a week before I had checked everything off and it was in a bag. That was a bigger barrier than climbing for 10 days, for me at least. The prep, the long-term thinking of the training, the fundraising, and owning the equipment. And, even in talking about it a bit, Dave shared some pointers with me around his extensive hiking experience. And I take things very literally when people with experience tell me things. It's like, worry about your feet. So I spent the month after that conversation filing off the calluses on my feet, soaking in Epsom salt bath, forming my boots the right way, because it made a ton of sense. If you're going to be hiking for 10 days, if your feet hurt, what the hell else are you going to focus on besides your feet hurting? So, interesting. I did not have one blister in 10 days, so thanks, Dave. But did that stop me from worrying about something else? No. And then I'm like, well, maybe if I had a blister, I wouldn't be worrying about everything else in my life and the 2 weeks I'm spending away from my daughter and how in the 3 hours I'm awake before everybody else I can accomplish something that I want to accomplish besides climbing up this mountain. I've been blessed with needing 4 hours of sleep a night. I have not gotten the gene check, but it's named after Margaret Thatcher, 4 hours sleep, fully functional. It's a gift, but not often do we do the right things with that gift. So what do you do when you're awake all the time? So for me, it was great. We're exhausted from a 10-mile hike. We go to bed, me 2 hours after everybody. I then wake up 2 hours before everybody. But we are in this retreat-like atmosphere with 17 people and a guide and Sherpas telling us what to do every minute. It actually was very much like a retreat. They're the experts. We follow them. And I still found a way at 3:30 every morning to pack a bag, put 3 books, 1 writing instrument and tablet, 1 camera, my meditation robe, and say, I'm leaving this damn lodge on the mountain. I'm going to go, I don't know what I was going to do. There were so many options rather than just going out and seeing the sunrise over the mountains. And probably by the 6th day, I just laughed at myself at all of the things I was putting in a hiking bag, all of the thoughts I had, because I never even had a goal. It was just, I have all these options. I have 3 hours of free time a day. I'm going to bring everything that I could possibly want to do, but you're also left with decisions to make. So by the 7th day, it was, I'm just going to bring a camera, snap a picture of a few things along the way so I can remember, and then come home and write about it. And that's the way I spent the last 3 days. But it was interesting that we can still find the way to continue to find something to worry about, no matter what we think we've solved. On this journey, there's also a lot of Tibetan Buddhism and lots going on. We visited monasteries and, I had spoken about Zen practice. Now I didn't even know where we were hiking. All I did, as I said earlier, fundraising, training, packing the bag. I didn't know how many miles we were going, the name of a town. I actually thought we were staying in tents the whole 10 days. Turns out Everest is pretty fancy and has lodges and electricity and Wi-Fi. And everybody else on the trip knew that. And I was very proud that I didn't look ahead. For me, if I look ahead, then I'm going to spend 6 months researching it, and I'm not going to enjoy myself because I've already figured everything out. And we're 16 C-level executives and scientists. They've all done all of that. It was actually really good. They knew everything. I could ask them a question. They could feel smart, and I could continue my practice. It worked for everybody. But I did still find there is some resentment, like I'm doing this the right way and you're not. Maybe for some that's true, maybe others it's not. Despite it not being my job to judge, I certainly did with each and every one of them along the way. Like we do on retreats, we've got impressions of who's doing what right, what wrong. But none of that really does take into account what's happening in the moment, but we just continue to do it. So it was an interesting journey, and that's why I signed up, I guess, was to see this presence or lack of and be able to continue to move forward. And, really the thought, battle weight issues and stress and all that in my life is just you're forced to do it if you have some other reason. And eventually these things become enjoyable. So even last week I picked my son up in Florida. I now have all this equipment. We're driving home. We don't have a rush. So we did back-to-back 10-mile hikes, and continuing that path forward keeps the movement going. And he hadn't worked out in 2 months, maybe left his room in 2 months, but he's 18 and in shape, and that's nothing to him. So he's laughing, backing up in the dark, trying to create trouble for himself. But it gave me a chance to say, do you know where the hell we're going right now? Because the light's out, my phone's dead. We were very prepped, but we took too long. That kind of changed his view of how easy this was. We do have to get back to the car, and we're fortunate we prepped enough, but what could we learn from this to be able to continue and get back before dark and others? So I think it was the greatest example for me of bringing the practice everywhere we go. There's no choice, and obviously with limited time to do seated meditation with all of this day planned, I had to pack my robe, I had to put it in my day pack. Didn't have to get up early, but I was going to be up and milling about. So I was able to incorporate my practice, but I still didn't meet the goals I had set. I had brought my mala beads. I'm going to do 108 bows every day. Not taking into account that I'm going to be walking 10 miles uphill in high, 17,000 feet of elevation. But I think not 1 second did I beat myself up when I changed that to sitting on a rock mid-hike, chanting Jijang Bosel for my father 108 times instead of 108 bows in the morning. Maybe days 1 and 2 when I didn't do the bows, I was doing that. But I think that's really the point is we make these goals, and you probably heard Jose say it to me 100 times, I missed practice yesterday, and I said I'm going to do it every day. And the first time I ever did this, when Kwan Haeng Sunim did the orientation, I said I'm going to do it every day from there on out. And I lied to people and said I did it 95% of the time, since it was probably 75. Then it's probably 95 to 100 now, at least the 15 to 25 minutes every day. But really, what are you going to do tomorrow? What was the commitment to yourself? And are you ready to do 108 bows while you're hiking all day and so on? So looks like 17 minutes have passed. And that's my talk. And I thank all of you for being here. And I thank Jose, Kwan Haeng Sunim, like I said, Dave, the pre-hike Sherpa on how not to hurt yourself. And we'll give it to Kwan Haeng Sunim now.
Thank you. Thank you for your talk. I enjoyed that. So, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, for me, Zen really is about your experience, and I admire George and his ability to be so relaxed in a group. You see, you just get a pen and just start yakking away, no problem, which is good. That's his experience. When I was in Korea and I started practicing, and then, of course, in Korea, there's not a lot of black monks there. And so when I became a monk, the television people ran upstairs because it's up on the upper floor. They ran upstairs with their cameras and stuff. We got to take a picture of this guy, and they come into the room. I was so self-conscious that they just looked at me and turned around and went away. I couldn't do it. I couldn't deal with the cameras and stuff like that. And then as I practiced later on, I became more relaxed. But so that's my experience. Zen Master Seung Sahn, he would never have notes in sitting in the thing. But this is my experience. Notes helps for me, so that's what I do. So our practice is about your experience, and I admire George's experience and how he does it, Zen Master Seung Sahn, and how he does it. But also, I have to do what I have to do, and so that kind of goes like that. And somebody have some question? Oh, go ahead.
George, thanks for the kind words. You talked a lot about a concept that I often shared with all the kids that I used to take hiking. The heaviest thing in your pack is your fear. Anytime you're facing something new, the heaviest thing you're carrying is your apprehension about it. Can you talk about that in terms of Zen and going into new situations and the fears and apprehensions and whatnot?
Well, that's a kind of thing. You can't always pinpoint your fear and stuff like that, and how exactly you work on it. So, like I said, I was up there in the Zen Center. I was very self-conscious with the cameras, and then the guys, and then they went away. And that was when I first started practicing. And then, of course, I just practiced as I was up there in Korea. And a couple years later, not many years, but a couple years later, I moved from Wagesa and I moved down to Musangsa. And of course, it's another part of it's another part of Korea. And so then again, once again, folks came over with the camera and they wanted to see who this was, and I'm right in the field, and we're doing, cultivating maybe cabbage, peichu or something for the kimchi, and they came over with the camera and they started asking me questions and stuff, and it was a problem. It wasn't a problem, and but I can't point to any one thing that happened, except that I simply kind of did the practice, and that was kind of like how that was. But it's a funny thing is that when I left America and went to Korea, when I left when I left the airport, and I was met by somebody who became a nun, Kwan Haeng Sunim. She met me and brought me to Wagisar. And then from that time until a year later, I was never alone. I mean, I had roommates. We showered together. We worked together. We ate together. And everything we did together. And then, and I think that has something with kind of straightening out the mind. It's a very interesting thing. And it's and so it's funny because along that line, because that has to do with the training and how one trains. Along that line, we had, I know that there's this nun, and she told me that they had gone to, nuns training, which is the kind of nuns training where you go and you study sutras and stuff like that. But part of the practice is, while they were doing there, they were sitting there, they're just novice nuns, and they're, doing their study. But while they're doing their study, there are teachers, other teachers, standing alongside of the wall watching them. Just watching us, just kind of like watching them. So they say that when you come out of that training, your mind is very clear. And for monks too, monks get the same kind of style treatment. And so there are kind of things that you could point to it, together action and that kind of a thing. So before, when I went to Korea, I had my own apartment. I lived alone, and often on the weekends I'd be alone and stuff like that. I didn't mind. I thought I enjoyed it. But I was talking to the people one time, and I told them like how I led my weekends, and one of them said, that's not healthy. It just naturally just said it popped out of his mouth. It's a Korean person. So that's the kind of interesting thing. And one of the main parts of our teaching is very fundamental, is together action. Because when you do a retreat and you come here and you get up at the same time in the morning, you have the same meal, we all should start together and we finish together. So the finishing together is kind of interesting point because, some people like more than others and kind of like that, but you kind of learn to look around the room and see how much food people got, and you kind of end at the same time. That's the kind of a training that I had in Korea. So we'd have this whole table of people and we're eating, but we all kind of finish at the same time. Nobody's got a big bowl of something and they're still eating while the rest of us finish. So when you do a formal meal, the formal meal is kind of like the same idea. You don't fill your bowl up and eat, even if you're that hungry, and you kind of all finish at the same time. Of course, the chukpi is hit at a certain time and all of that. And then, of course, you work together, and all the time you're around people. So you have ideas and stuff like that. But your ideas, I don't like to have 4 bowls, but you got 4 bowls. What are you going to do there? And fight about the idea about the 4 bowls, you let it go. So, and I think one of the things that you learn about that is that you learn not to dwell on your emotions and stuff like, oh, this is dumb. And so then you keep thinking about how that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you don't like it, okay, it's not the best thing. But if you find that you just do it later on your emotions and stuff like, oh, this is dumb. And so then you keep thinking about how that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you don't like it, okay, it's not the best thing. But if you find that you just do it later on, the first point as you bring this, attaining this not knowing mind. So this not knowing mind is primary point. So that's the first point. So when you sit here, you breathe in, clear mind, breathe out, don't know, and it just brings you to this moment, primary point. And then it changes a little bit to this clear mind. The floor is brown, my clothes are gray. Listen to the trees. We're not going to have these kinds of days where we can listen to the birds and the trees like this and not have the air conditioning and stuff going. So we're not going to have a lot of them. We're going to get a few more, and then the heat hits, and then there's suffering. Well, not suffering, but it's a different thing. So you get to sit there and listen to the air conditioners, not yeah. Anyways, that's how that is. And so then having the floor is brown, my clothes are gray, the trees and stuff, that's truth. And then after that, truth is how do we use that truth? And so that kind of brings me into this thing about becoming a Dharma teacher. And when you become a Dharma teacher, it's you begin to practice for your practice gets more the how can I help. So how can I help? So one of the things, though, as you become a Dharma teacher and practicing, one of the important things is then you begin to learn about your own karma, your own mistakes, and how do I deal with that. Okay? So one thing about Dharma teachers, you think all of a sudden it's running around and teaching other people, but they say that it's very easy to notice the people's problems. Okay? But to notice your problems, oh, that's a whole different ballgame, you know. So they say, like, you can noticing your problems is, you know, it could be like a log in your eye, and still you don't see that. So then, working on as a Dharma teacher, working on your issues and stuff like that, that's always important. You know, Dave come up and ask something about whatever you asked about. That's the kind of interest about how can I become more relaxed and in public and stuff like that. That for me was an issue for a long time. You know, one of the things that they do in Korea is they just stick, as a monk, they just always stick you out in front of people. So, you know, it can get kind of stressful. We had a thing where every Harlot Buddha's birthday, they'd bring us to the middle of this town square, and we'd be up on this thing because, you know, it's up on this platform there, and everybody's standing around there with it's really interesting. And it was at that time when that was happening, I had my attention, you know, I mean, I'm really stressed, and then all of a sudden my attention just fell from my head and dropped down to my belly, and I was relaxed. It's very interesting to have that happen. And so, yeah, you don't want to chase after that, but that's the direction. That's the kind of direction. So everybody has insights and stuff when they're sitting. Something clicks, right? That's something said. You don't want to chase that, but what you say, oh, that's a sign, and you don't hang around the sign and look, oh, this is a nice sign. No, you continue on with your direction and your that you have, which is how can I help? So having done that. There's another thing that we can talk about, and the Buddha would talk about 4 kinds of ways of helping. Does anybody have any questions? Today is very quiet. Go ahead. Go ahead with the question.
Because I just got back from my sister's, so I stayed in a completely domestic house for a week, and just helping them, and they don't practice at all. So actually, she said when I left that she appreciated that, you know, she felt less stress. You know, she got some peace from me just being there. But, you know, together action in a normal family is not like being in a center or surrounded by people and we're all trying to bring our attention down and pay attention and those things, you know, it's not there. So I think most people have that environment here. Like they don't have reflection back from people that's really clear or beneficial even. It's difficult. So how do you... if you're the right person, how do you
deal with that? Yeah.
How do you bring that peace into that?
Well, you know, that's once again, that together action helps you to put down your opinion. I went home from Korea after I stayed in Korea the first 5 years. I stayed there and didn't leave. And then when I came home, my mother all of a sudden started giving me all this meat, and she kind of, and I just sat there and ate the meat, and then later on, when my father, he wanted to, you know, sit at the TV and have a beer, just have a beer, you know. So we all have to learn how to get along with each other. That's a very important point. Is to get along. Our practice helps us to do that, you know, and what helps us to do that is putting down your ideas and your opinions. And so you got to look at your family. You got to have then you get some, you know, attainment. Or look at whatever situation you have at home, you know, whether it be alone or you just have a cat or you're with people. I mean, even you have a cat, what you have is you have neighbors. And so how do you relate to those neighbors and stuff like that? So it's all, I mean, I think that you're just talking about a different situation. And so I know you guys saying, oh, yeah, here living at the Zen Center, it's very easy to gather action. It's not easy. Yes, anybody living in the Zen Center, it's not easy. There's always somebody that's got something going on, some issue, something, and we learn how to do that. And so having him going through that stuff, you went home and you were able to be with your family, and that's all that is. I think that's a really good thing. Yeah.
I think the thing that I find with being with family, or it's how you feel like you've made mistakes, or you feel like you have failings, or you judge other people for their failings. So when you're together, you're judging yourself, you're judging others. I guess I'm wondering, what does the practice teach us about accepting specific mistakes we may have made, or accepting ourselves for who we are and accepting other people for who they are, so that we can be better at getting along and doing those together actions like you're speaking about? Sure.
I think that's what our practice is about, is that we're sitting here, and as we sit here, breathe in, clear mind, breathe out. Don't know, or breathe in, clear mind, breathe out, and counting. Now what that's going to happen is what you're talking about. All your issues are going to be coming up right here while you're sitting. Okay, all of these issues are going to be coming up. And what do? Do you dwell on those issues? Do you follow them? Or do you try to push them away? No, you just come back to this moment, to what you're doing. Okay? And when you do that whatever appears sooner or later disappears. And then when it'll repair again, and then it'll fall. But you notice that what's happening is that you're not reacting to it, you're not following it, you're not holding on to it. So sometimes stuff comes up and you hold on to it. But as you practice, you begin to learn to not dwell on it. Also, when you practice and you look at your stuff, it gets kind of sickening. It's not really a whole lot of fun to dwell on it anyway. So then you just begin to come back to this stuff. So when you learn to do that, and you do that, and you get in front of your family and those situations appear, it becomes easier to not act on them. So when you're sitting here, you can't act on any of those things, Even if you like cigarettes and you want to go out there and smoke a cigarette, at this time you cannot do that. So then you're training yourself not to dwell on that, not to act on it. And so just the simple, Zen Master Debong's thing was, just sitting there, even if you have, really bad habits and stuff, while the time that you're sitting there, you're not doing those bad habits. So that's already a plus right there. So just to come to a retreat and just to do the retreat and follow what other people are doing, that's already something. That's already taking control of your mind. Because what do they say about the mind? They say that the mind is a good servant and a bad master. So I like to say that. That's so true. But that's how you deal with that stuff for sure. When you sit here, your stuff is going to come up. It's always going to come up, and it's just coming back to this moment. Yeah.
You can use that mic over there. Yes, I can.
Did you hear a talk? My son graduated from college this Friday, and we actually had a very nice time celebrating. I did witness some crazy stuff, but just didn't dwell on it.
Mm-hmm.
But
what the youngsters are up to.
I actually asked him to call me next day. I didn't get a phone call until 4 p.m. and he said, "Oh, I just woke up from my nap." It's okay, I'm not judging or anything. But anyway, sometimes my kids, they're giving me sort of like a kongan. And during the party, and he actually asked me, he says, I know you're practicing Zen, and Dad, you've been very great. You've been wonderful, Dad. And I said, thank you for saying all that stuff. But I was truly appreciative. And one of the things he said that struck me is that, you know, when you're not, I know you practice Zen, but when you're not actively practicing, are you still practicing Zen? So I was actually kind of stuck for a moment, and I said, yeah, I practice every day, every moment. And that was kind of a flippant, you know, standard canned response. But I guess I do try to practice that every day. But how does anyone really practice Zen when you're not aware or when you're actively practicing?
Yeah, there's no such thing as Zen. That's just an idea, a concept. And so if you try to practice, follow some kind of concept, that's going to be really kind of weird. But if you do the practice, so Zen does have a meaning about doing the practice, but there's not a Zen, okay? So one of the things that we do is that we simply practice. We sit here, and I always like to come to this point of this is why we practice. We practice so that we can bring it outside to where we're into our day-to-day life. So for me, I went up and I did the 90-day. This has happened different ways. I've had this appear for me. Okay, so I went up to the monastery and I practiced for the 90 days. And it was a hard retreat. It was a strong winter, and this was in 1986. And then I came out, and I found one day I was out here, I'm cutting wood and stuff like that. And as I'm cutting the wood, I just have my T-shirt on. It's winter, but and there's snow on the ground. But when you start chopping wood like that, you get warmed up. I was quite comfortable. I've been doing that for a while because I lived at the Zen Center. And then all of a sudden, I realized that for the past 5 or 10 minutes, I wasn't really thinking about anything. I was just chopping the wood. That's all that I was doing. That was, for me, really a wake-up call that showed me that I was actually in doing the correct thing. I was in the right direction. This was what I wanted to do. And so you're talking to somebody that's used to stay up nights worrying and thinking and yeah. And so here I'm cutting wood and there's not this thinking and it's got all this stuff going on. So then this practice, you don't walk around doing Zen. I really want to stress that. What the practice does is it frees you up of those ideas and those concepts, really. So that one day you might find yourself walking down the street and you're looking in the store windows at the nice, whatever it is, the clothes or the fishing gear or whatever that, and then you go down and you are walking down the street and you see the light and you stop and you're waiting for the people. And then once in a while you look back and you say, well, that's all that I was doing. I wasn't thinking about my lunch. I wasn't thinking about my dinner. I wasn't thinking about this, that, and the other. I was just doing that. So those kinds of moments just kind of appear. And as they appear, that's like when you, a kind of insight that just simply shows you in the correct direction. But there are ways of practicing, of holding a wadu 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and like that. But when you break that is a technique of practice. But when you break out of that practice, when you finally your mind opens up, where do you wind up? Just like walking down the street, and just that's how it is. So in a sense, what you was doing with your son, if you was with your son, you're just talking to him. Like, what are you doing right now? Only that. That. Okay. All right. So, okay. That kind of took a turn, didn't it?
Or he wasn't listening. That's it.
Okay. So anyway, so yes, then you're just like talking to me or listening to me or like that. And if you're talking to me or listening to me, then would you say that's Zen? Is that Zen? You're talking to me or listening to me, but that's Zen. That's a funny way to look at that. Okay? And so the Buddha said that there were 4 ways to kind of help people. And one of the ways is, the first way that he would say, give them something that they need or something that they like. If somebody, they give them some food, give them some clothing, give them that thing that they need or want, and that helps to relax their mind. And the second way is giving to encouraging speech. So you have somebody who is for instance, trying to put down alcohol or has some kind of addiction, then that's encouraging speech. How did I work that? Oh, yes, sorry. Then, my notes, I need my notes. So this encouraging speech is that, somebody is going to AA or kind of like that thing, then what's an interesting thing about that is that nobody just goes and starts doing AA who hasn't fallen flat on their face or something like that. So you want to give them the encouraging speech. Everybody fails and stuff like that are doing that. And we all have our things where we fall down. So encouraging speech, help them along, and by that, in that way, so you help them within their life. So that's the second way. And the third way is, I don't usually do this like this. So then the third way is actually to do teaching, to talk about truth. And so very thing that I like to do is that I think is quite important. When we do orientation and stuff like that, I like to, regardless of what your life situation is, I do orientation, I like to give people stuff that they can walk away with. So I talk to them about mind and about some of the things that you can do, the practical stuff that happens when you breathe in and breathe out. The idea that yes, your mind is a good servant and a bad master. That's a fact. You can take that to anywhere that you go out there, and if you have that in mind and know that you don't have to follow him. And also, so that's a way of teaching Dharma that you can teach to anybody, even that they come here and you're sitting in for just the orientation, and you don't need to give just solid Zen kind of an orientation, but talk to them about how when you are when you're exercising, you're working, and you're huffing and puffing, you're not following your emotions and stuff like that. So what does that mean? That means that you got some way that when you're upset and angry, something to do. Go out and run and huff and puff, and then you'll find that this upset mind has less of an effect on you when you do kind of things like that. So that's a teaching that you can give and helping people to teach, and that you can sort of not necessarily teach the Dharma, but help people with the teaching. But then there's the 3 poisons: anger, ignorance, and greed, which is always part of human existence. So that's and you can give teaching. So that's number 3. And so then the 4th one, I don't have to look for the 4th one. So the 4th way is, in Zen Master Seung Sahn would say that this way is together action. So you do together action with people. So if your friend likes to ride bikes, you ride bikes with him. If he likes dancing, she likes dancing, you go dancing with them. But it can be a kind of a touch situation, because if he happens to be a thief, and then you got to go, not have to, but you go out and steal. This is Zen Master Seung Sahn, so I'm going to give it to you like that, and you take it as it. So you go out and also you steal with this person, and you do what he does. And then Zen Master said that at one point what happens is that maybe you both get caught and you're in jail. And you're in jail together, right? And so then your friend, who you're trying to help, looks over at you and sees that actually your mind is quite clear. That you and he asks you about like what's going on, and then you can give him some teaching. Now the thing, I know this sounds interesting because we're also looking at. So this is the kind of teaching he does, and what he does is he does this kind of extreme thing. Of course, we all understand that if we have a friend that we want to help and stuff like that. We go bike riding and go out to dinner and dancing fine. But this one here, where he's at this extreme, and that it's about helping that person, and he sees that you're that clear. He says that not anybody can do that. You have to have a really, really strong center to do something like that. And as close as I could relate to that is that I used to smoke, and I loved smoking cigarettes. And I really enjoy smoking cigarettes, so much so that sometimes when I'd be with my sisters or something like that, and they were having difficulty, and they would smoke a cigarette, then I would smoke a cigarette, kind of like together action. But I realized that I can't do that. I don't have the ability to take out a cigarette and smoke, because why? I'll be addicted. And I'll have so. And I've done that. I mean, I've fallen on that a number of times, because even I find that if you smoke, you say, "Oh, that's it." A month later, that'll come up and grab me, and I'll be smoking again. So yeah, Zen is about your experience. It's not about the Zen Master Seung Sahn's experience or the Buddha's experience. It's about your experience and you believing in yourself and using these tools to help you get on in life. So Dave talked about something that comes up, but if you look at each one of us, we get rid of some of our issues as we're practicing. But if you think you're going to come here and a year later all your issues are going to be gone, that's not going to happen. It's a process. It's just a continuous process of coming back and letting those things fall. And some of it is really strong and takes a longer time. Other times it's simpler. All right, but nobody's going to come in here and just have everything just fall away. And so so that's what they say, is that, they would say sometimes, "Oh, this Zen Master did this, and and the Zen Master did that." And I just heard one of the teachers say, "Well, if you were a jerk before you were a Zen Master, you become a Zen Master, you're still going to be a jerk." So then, that's kind of like how that. But he also, you got to work on your stuff all the time, and that's kind of like how that is. Oh, we got 11:33. Okay.
Thank you for your wonderful talks. I have a lot of announcements, so please bear with me, but it's kind of a gift also, I think. So yesterday we had a fabulous art retreat, and speaking of retreats, what I really enjoy is that we always have people who don't normally come to the Zen Center. So we had a mom and a son, and we had someone's friend, and we had someone who the only other time she was here was for another retreat, and it was just an amazing experience. Our next retreat is a 2-day YMJJ, which is going to be at the monastery on June 7th, and you can sit one or both days. And at the YMJJs, we do the formal meals, which is, again, a wonderful ritual. We also have a 1-day Christian Buddhist retreat on June 21st and a 1-day Zen retreat on July 12th. Summer and winter culture registration is also open. For summer culture in July, there is a 3-day minimum. And we have actually even more retreats. So if you go out, you will see on the coffee table, I've put some flyers. Feel free to take one. Next, save the date for Founders Day and our 2nd annual PZC Zen Fest. That's on August 2nd and 3rd. If you are thinking about taking precepts, speak to Kwan Haeng Sunim or Zen Master Tangong. If you are a writer, musician, or artist and would like to share your work, let us know, or you can email media@providencezen.org. And we're also looking for volunteers to help us organize Zen Fest. Our next indoor-outdoor sangha workday is May 31st, and we're going to work in the garden, and we're also going to try to paint the hallway so that we can put up art for Zen Fest, so please join us for that. And of course, we have our weekly events. On Wednesday night, we have dinner, and we also have chanting, which we don't have on Sundays. So if you're curious about chanting, come on Wednesday night. Lastly, if you've been coming to the Zen Center for a while, consider becoming a member or making a donation. Close to half of our operating costs are covered by donations, so those really make a difference. Join us for refreshments right outside, and the gift shop will be open, but please be mindful of the rental that's going on downstairs. And that is all. Thank you so much.